Episode 10 of Eyes on Liberty is with freedom maximalist Adam Simecka, and you may know him from his tweets challenging Michael Saylor on his recent comments on Bitcoin self custody. We're going to talk to Adam about the art of tasteful engagement farming. We're also going to speak on freedom found in Jesus Christ, his experience homeschooling his children, Bitcoin's role in liberty, and his recent developments on his wallet called Manna. Now, he's a longtime digital friend of mine, and this is the first time I get to speak with him live. It's a great episode. Check it out. So, Adam, one of the interesting things about our relationship is that we have worked together and communicated for a number of years. And you're one of the few Bitcoin friends I would say I have where I've never actually had a chance to talk to in person for this long. I Bitcoin magazine people I've met, SWAN people I've met, but you contributed some Christian articles to my Substack branch of truth. Oh, sorry, belt of truth. Branch of hope is my church, and then we've always been in contact because of our shared values, because of our shared professions, and now I have you on my podcast. So welcome to Eyes on Liberty. How are you today?
I'm great. Happy to be here. Thank you for having me on. Really excited to get to talk with you in person for the first time, even though I feel like we already know each other so well. And I've got a little bit of a head start, I think, because I've been able to watch, your podcasts and stuff, and I don't necessarily have as much content out there, at least, with my face, but it's nice to get to finally do this. It's been a long time coming.
Right on. And I appreciate that. I appreciate you always, supporting my work. And I've always supported your work in the background as well. We're going to talk about some of your work. But I do want to I did allude to your background. I kind of I want you to give the audience a summary of where you come from and how you kind of got to your place in Bitcoin now.
Yeah. So a lot of people would probably call me a Bitcoin maximalist. And there's certainly some truth to that. I didn't always start that way. I'd consider myself probably first and foremost a freedom maximalist. And I think that's probably something that you've resonated with at some point. And a lot of people maybe have as well. But freedom's kind of the reason why I am here. It's the reason why I found Bitcoin. It's the reason why I love Bitcoin. It creates an even playing field for everybody, gives everybody a seat at the table, and kind of just to some degree reshuffles the deck and allows folks to have a more equitable chance at life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I found Bitcoin. Well, I'll just kind of give a quick background of my intro to all this. So I was in the Air Force for 6 years. I was a firefighter in the Air Force, which was really fun. I really enjoyed that. Now I'm kind of in the private sector, just doing sales, pushing paper, and stacking as many sats as I can. But kind of where it all began was I was deployed. And so I was over in the Middle East, and I had 24-hour shifts. So it was 24 on, 24 off. And so it was
real quick. What was your assignment, if you're allowed to say? Oh, you're a firefighter. So you're just
Yep.
always
Operation
on.
Inherent Resolve.
Yeah. Okay.
So we were supporting some of the ongoing efforts in Iraq and Iran, and some of the conflicts just generally in the Middle East. So we were basically kind of the hub of everything coming in and going out. And so my job was just really just being a firefighter. So I was protecting all the assets and people. My specific role was the base lodging, or the where people lived. And so we would run calls for emergencies of any kind, and fires too, of course. But kind of back to the story, 24 on, 24 off. It gave me a lot of time, a lot of free time. I focused on, my health. But the other thing I wanted to focus on while I was there and kind of just had this time to myself was my finances. And so I didn't really know what I was doing in the beginning. I was like, I just want to start, investing some of this money that I'm able to save and don't have to spend right now. And so I got into stock the stock market. So I started picking some stocks and doing some research. Again, this is really early on in my journey. And I was just kind of watching videos and doing research online on the best way to invest in the things that I liked and believed in. But through that process, I got an advertisement. I think it was like on Facebook or something. It was an Investopedia ad for an article that talked about Ethereum. And so I had actually heard about Ethereum before I ever heard about Bitcoin. But I was reading through this article, and the article itself was actually outlining the concept of proof of work. And as I was reading through this and I was learning about what proof of work was, like, and a light bulb just immediately went off in my head. I'm like, this is literally it. This is like the turning point. And so I got through that article, and as soon as I finished reading the article, I remember I like sent my brother a message. It's like, hey, can you like get on a video call with me? Like, I have to tell you something. And so I kind of went through it with him and told him, like, dude, this is the future. This is going to change everything. And so as soon as I got off of my shift that day, I went back to my we were in trailers. So I went back to my trailer at that point in the desert, and I got on, figured, I was like, how do I, get involved with this? And somebody was like, okay, well, there's this place called Coinbase. And at the time, Coinbase was one of the only ways that you could buy Bitcoin. Mt. Gox had already come and gone at that point. This was in like 2017. And so I got on Coinbase and I saw they were selling Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Litecoin. I was like, I don't really know what the difference is between any of these things. So I bought all of them. Had no idea what I was doing, but that was the start of my.
It's the same thing, same time frame. Continue. So weird. Yeah.
And so through that, I'm like, okay, I sold all my stocks. I put it all into Bitcoin, Litecoin, and Ethereum. And I was like, okay, I just need to figure out like what's going on here. So I started doing all the research I could, and really kind of latched on to, at the time, one of the pioneers was Andreas Antonopoulos. And he taught me almost everything that I know. I actually ended up going through one of his courses through the University of Nicosia, which was really monumental in teaching me how Bitcoin works and really kind of just how everything works in general as it pertains to Bitcoin and everything around it. It did take a few years for me to realize essentially that everything else is a scam, whether that is intentional or not. Like I typically say, like, everything's a scam. Some of them are blatant scams, and some of them are just scams on accident. But either way, I came to the conclusion that Bitcoin really was the best and only option. And a lot of that came through my journey as it came to an intersection with a lot of the COVID-19 draconian, authoritarian, tyrannical mandates and lockdowns and stuff like that, and realized that the only solution to any of those problems is Bitcoin, and nothing else can really help with that. And so that's kind of where I started. I know it was a long kind of intro, but that's kind of where I came from.
Are you kidding me? Long intro. We have another 50 minutes to talk. That was succinct, but that military, that military training, you got that bottom line up front, part down right. So I appreciate that. And so one thing I think the audience would appreciate most is that you have multiple facets of your Bitcoin presence. You're a pleb, obviously. You've been on the pleb underground recently with Coin Icarus and Walton, where I am also a part of. You have a wallet development. We'll talk about that soon. But I think the biggest highlight for you, at least right now, is your morphing into this social engagement personality. And I would say even, dare I say, engagement farming. And I'm like, wait, is this the Adam? Is this the brother in Christ, the meek shall inherit the earth brother in Christ? And he's throwing darts at Michael Saylor and everyone else who will get in the way. And I'm like, yes, that's him. It's like, oh, okay, wow, this is a Christian warrior. So let me ask you something. And of course, Bitcoin warrior, Christian warrior, anything that is on your heart, you're willing to drop it in a tweet and make it so you have this formula that enables people to either hate it enough to comment, love it enough to comment and retweet it. And I just got to get your Sun Tzu kind of motif, like, teach me, senpai, teach me. What is going on with this tasteful engagement farming that you have? What's your formula, and what caused you to go down that path in the first place?
Well, it kind of, for most people, happens on accident, like it did with me. Kind of just ended up here. It started, I'll tie it back into what I was saying earlier with like the COVID-19 stuff. And Bitcoin, to me, really exemplifies freedom. It gave me the freedom to kind of stand behind the things that I believe in during some pretty hard times in my life. So there was a point where the company that I work for, they told me that I was going to lose my job, and they said, I think that they gave me like 2 months to get the injection. So they said, you're going to need to get injected, and you're going to need to show proof that you did, or we're going to fire you. And I had been with the company at this point for 7 or 8 years, and so I had a long history with the company to some degree, and I was really surprised that that came down, that they were willing to get rid of me if I didn't do this. And so because of Bitcoin, I was able to say no. I never said anything. I kind of just waited to see what was going to happen. But they told me, they were like, hey, it wasn't like my immediate supervisor, but like the super high ups in the company, they put out a letter basically to everybody saying, if you didn't comply with the mandate, we will terminate your position. And so I was like getting ready to just like have my whole life turned upside down, but I wouldn't have been able to do that if I didn't, have the ability to utilize Bitcoin, partially because of the Bitcoin that I had, but also just knowing that I have this network that I can continue to use. I can't be shut off like Trudeau style in Canada with the truckers. They can't just go freeze my bank accounts. Well, they can, but I don't really need my bank accounts anymore because of Bitcoin. And so, Bitcoin gave me a voice. It gave me confidence. It gave me the ability to speak my mind and stand up for the things that I believe in. And so that kind of translated just to, every area of my life, including X and, all kinds of, social engagement throughout my life. And at this point, like, I've said things that some people don't like. A lot of people don't like some things that are controversial, and those types of things tend to do pretty well on social media. Sensationalism gets amplified to a degree. And so over the last, year or so, I've just, I said some things that kind of caught on, so to speak. And as you said, there's people in the comments that get, feathers ruffled or whatever, but it's all engagement. And so like my engagement's been going pretty high recently. And so it was probably about a month or so ago, I shot a post out to my followers on X, and I'm just like, hey, here's a warning. Like I'm getting like within shooting range of being monetized on X. So I'm just going to go for it. This is a warning, like mute me now if you don't want to hear all this.
I remember that. Was it 10? Is it 10K followers? Is that the threshold or something?
No, it's 5 million impressions over the last 3 months. I think there is a follower minimum too. I don't know, but that's the metric that I was shooting for. And so I was at like 3.9 when I put that out. And I was like, hey guys, just FYI, I'm going to be super annoying over the next few weeks because I'm just going to be blasting as much engagement as I can. And so some people thought that was funny. Some people, I don't know, they probably didn't, but nonetheless.
But even that right there, like you're brutally honest. And that honesty carries with it some sort of virality, I think, where people are scared to say bad things about Michael Saylor because he's almost like this de facto king of Bitcoin because he pumped people's bags, allegedly. In my opinion, I think Bitcoin would have done just as fine without Michael Saylor as it did. Now, maybe some people bought MicroStrategy. I know you have some. I know I have some. And so that feels good. But in terms of Bitcoin, that Bitcoin would have been in someone else's hands. And so I don't feel that obligation to him, and you don't either. And so you're willing to call a spade a spade. And even with your engagement thing, you're willing to say, hey, I'm going for 5 million. Mute me. And it's like, no, we want to hear more of that. That's enticing. That's like Tyson slapping Jake Paul in the face right away. And of course you want to see that. And of course it was probably planned. So anyways, continue. I'm sorry.
Real quick, you brought up Tyson. Did you see his interview with the little kid? I think it was like yesterday.
No. Oh, what happened?
You should check it out. It's kind of funny. He's just super like honest.
Oh, Tyson with the kid,
Painfully
or
honest. Yeah, Tyson with the kid. He shatters this kid's hopes and dreams about his basically his legacy and his ego. You'll have to check it out. It's very entertaining. But
that's crazy. Yeah.
He's an honest dude, and
which he always was. I'm
yeah.
going to destroy you. And he is right as close as, like, I'm looking into this lens right now. I'm going to kill you. And that's what Bitcoin is. And that's why it works. It's brutally honest with economics. And I think that's why you work with your engagement. That's what hey, I'm just saying, Michael Saylor is not talking about self-custody anymore. And he started off and something changed. What changed? And people say, well, Michael Saylor is like, he's great the best thing I've heard is he's a net positive. I've heard so many people that are net positives. That means you're looking at the bad parts and you're saying, that's okay. My subjective values say he can do whatever he wants because he's net positive. What's net positive? We deal with subjective value. If someone is in the wrong, you should call them out.
Yeah, and that's really all I did. I didn't slander Michael Saylor in any way. I just basically reiterated what he said and implied that, there was some dangerous rhetoric in some of the things that he said, which I think he has since acknowledged, which is great, because it tells us that the cyber hornet defense mechanism is working, right? And I think that's really awesome about Saylor. He pays attention to his audience, and that's kind of, I think, part of what led us down this path is, he wasn't necessarily speaking to you and I. In some of those clips where he talks, he kind of demeans self-custody to a degree. He was really talking to a different audience, a more sophisticated TradFi audience, I think. And I think that's why he said some of the things that he did was to try to kind of deflect some of the negative possible attention of Bitcoin. And I'll also just say, like, I'm a huge fan of Michael Saylor, but he's not like above reproach for me. Like if he says something stupid, I'm going to clip it out and I'm going to put it on X and I'm gonna, talk about it. So and not that what he said was stupid. I just didn't agree with what he said. But anyway, like I said, it's really kind of all just a part of just having fun and speaking my mind. Like, I'm just on X to have some fun and talk to people, some like-minded folks. And if I can get Elon to buy me some sats in the process through the monetization, I'm gonna do it.
Well, you did say something that he is not above reproach. And in my opinion, and I think in your opinion too, there is only one who is above reproach, and that is Jesus Christ. And
absolutely.
Yeah, and we have, and I'm not afraid to talk about Christ on my podcast. It's my show, so people can unfollow if they want. It's already as low as it is. It can't go that much lower. So we're going to try to speak truth here. And in terms of that, I think that's why we probably engaged with each other early on. We look for people who have the cross in their profile, or speak about Jesus openly while promoting the Bitcoin message. And there is a clear intersection of both of those narratives, or both of those realities. And we exemplified, I think, both of us as much as we can. So I want to talk to you about, and again, Jesus Christ. Some people see, Christ or organized religion as some sort of bondage. I think there's an old, Marxist quote where it's like, I don't know the person, but I hear it all the time, like religion is a crutch, something like that. But the Bible speaks of Christ in a different way. They speak of Christ as freedom. And so as a freedom maxi, as a Bitcoiner, as a Bible believing Christian, I want you to talk to me about, what is freedom found in Christ to you? And then if you want to tie it to Bitcoin, you can, but this is probably the Christ mini segment, if you will.
Sure. I think this is a great opportunity to kind of relate it into Bitcoin and what Bitcoin is for me, and why I'm so passionate about it. or I guess perhaps maybe I should say, why I'm so eager to share it. So, I found truth in Christ, and likewise, I found truth in Bitcoin. And when you find truth, you're in a situation where you feel compelled to share that truth with other people. And it's easy for an outsider. Let's just kind of take an analogy here with Bitcoin. It's easy for an outsider to say, Bitcoin's a scam, and they just shut themselves off from it, right? But once you've crossed that chasm and you've realized that Bitcoin, it's not a scam, and there's actually, a legitimate purpose for it, and you go down that rabbit hole and you realize, light bulb after light bulb turns on for you, and you realize how big of a deal it is, you want to share that with people. Like, Bitcoin saved me financially. It saved me in so many different ways. And that, physical salvation is something I want to share with everybody in my life. And so I'm telling my friends and my family about Bitcoin. But in a similar vein, Jesus saved my eternal soul. And because Jesus saved my soul and I have been redeemed, and essentially been forgiven for my sin, that's something I want to share with other people too, because a lot of people, may not necessarily have had that same experience, but they can. And it's just like with Bitcoin, I want to share it with as many people as possible because I've experienced that truth. And when I teach people about Bitcoin, when I tell them about Bitcoin, I'm not doing it for any personal gain. Like, you can probably understand and relate to. Like, I don't get any special points or any special incentive. I'm not, in the affiliate program for Bitcoin. I'm not getting a kickback for it. I just want people to have that freedom that I've experienced. And so in that same vein, I just want people to have the same experience that I've had, with my personal faith and my personal relationship with Christ.
It's funny that you mentioned the kickback or the incentive structure of sharing what you share. A lot of people who are involved in the cryptoverse, they're gonna tell you something about some cryptocurrency, and it's because they're getting a kickback. And you can go down the list. I did a piece on with SWAN about all the athletes that were involved in 2021 that were talking about crypto or Bitcoin, from Odell Beckham, Serena Williams, Aaron Rodgers, whether they were, legitimate, Bitcoiners or not, or even whether they were legitimate Ethereum max holders or not. I doubt that if Floyd Mayweather was holding Ethereum max, but whoever was making that coin, they probably gave him a nice six-figure sum, and to talk about it on stage. So it's like, we talk about Bitcoin because we care, but we also talk about its ups and downs. We're more than willing to say, get ready for a wild ride. That yes, it's volatile, and volatility is what makes it great. If it wasn't volatile, it could essentially be dead. It might as well be dead. And so when we look at our Christian walk, while some sects or denominations may promise wealth and prosperity, Christ did not. Christ said, "You must pick up your cross to follow me," which is a stand-in or an analogy for self-sacrifice. And that self-sacrifice, if you see that when he picked up his cross, he went to Calvary to die. Some are called to die. Some are called to die physically. Some are called to die emotionally, mentally. And so my question to you is, how have you seen the volatility of Christianity in your life? Because I'm pretty sure it can't all be roses in the field.
No, it's definitely not all roses in the field. It's, I mean, there's definitely ups and downs. There's been parts of my life where I have, felt, any of the things a normal person feels from time to time. Feelings of just being lost or depressed or despair. But I have something I can fall back on, and that is my relationship with God. So no matter how bad things get, I still have that relationship. I still have my Bible. I can still, pray, and God hears my prayers, and I'm absolutely confident and certain of that. And if you pray to Him, He will hear your prayers too. But it's not all sunshine and rainbows. You're going to get persecuted, and the Bible tells us this. People will persecute you, but you know, I'd rather be persecuted for Christ's name's sake than persecuted for anything else, because really what that is just it's people being convicted themselves. And I'm going to tie it back into Bitcoin, right? I mean, people with their own, you know, project or crypto, they're always going to say, no, you're wrong, and my thing is better, but they've got something to sell you. And you know, whether or not you want to look at it this way, I don't believe I have anything to sell you as it pertains to, you know, any type of religion or indoctrination or anything like that. My goal is to just, you know, share with you, like, I have found peace. You know, I found, you know, this everlasting joy in Christ, and I get to enjoy that for all of eternity, because at some point, you know, everybody's going to die. We all die. And it's best that you face that reality now while you're alive. Yeah. So that's my message.
When peace like when peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. And that's a hymn that I sing, that my church sings often enough, and I think it deals with the volatility of life, but the foundation of Christ, which is the rock. And so, you know, we find liberty in Christ. And then again, I'm going to tie back to Bitcoin. We find this liberty in Bitcoin. Bitcoin maxi, you're not just a Bitcoin maxi. Bitcoin is a part of an overarching stance of, I shall be able to own my life. Of course, you know, God owns everything, but he has bestowed to me some sort of free will, some sort of liberty to work out my own incentives. And so when you look at Bitcoin's role in liberty, just like a gun is, you know, your bearer asset so that you can protect your rights, how do you see Bitcoin's role in liberating people in the fiat world, both in the West, in the privileged West, and and I guess the underprivileged emerging world?
Well, it's hard for me and, you know, folks like me to see everything that's happening across the globe, just because we're really in this bubble in the United States or any other first world country, you know, where we have, you know, relatively functional economies, and so it's a lot easier for me to point to that. And so with Bitcoin, obviously the big selling point, if you want to put it that way, with Bitcoin is, you know, a hedge against currency debasement. So we have a pretty big issue. I don't know if you're aware, but they keep printing money, and the more they print, the more expensive stuff gets for us. And they will try to deflect that as much, you know, as they can by trying to convince us that printing money doesn't affect prices. They will literally say that, which is absolutely crazy, because I think my 8-year-old would be able to tell you exactly what causes prices to go up, mostly because I've taught her, but she also understands on a pretty deep level, you know, what the causes of inflation are and what the effects of it are as well too.
Let me cut you
So
off real quick. Isn't it funny that you can teach an 8-year-old this concept, you know? And I mean, going back to Christianity, you know, Christianity can be deep and it can be simple as well. Bitcoin is both complicated and simple. And the problems it's solving is both simple and complicated. So like you taught your 8-year-old, hey, money printing, more money out there cost more for your apples and your cereal and your toys. It's amazing how a child can understand Bitcoin's need in this world.
yeah, well, they throw us into these government indoctrination camps for 12 years to basically rewire our brains. And a big part of that, if you're following economics at all, a big part of that is Keynesian style economics, which doesn't really line up with reality. But they teach it to us and drill it into our brains for so long that we come out on the other side thinking that you can centrally plan an economy and that it's effective and that it's better than, you know, the free market working in it by itself. You know, I think that that's a huge problem, is our education system, which, you know, I've taken my kids out of that system. We do homeschool here. And if you're watching this or listening to this, if you have any ability to do that, I can just speak from my own perspective. It's been such a huge payout, just incredibly beneficial for me and my family, just to do homeschool in our homes. The benefits are not just being able to spend time with each other, which is huge, but just being able to raise our own kids and not have somebody else do it. Whether or not you agree with the things that happen in the public education system, I think that everybody can agree that raising your own children is better than having somebody else do it for you. And so that's probably the top priority. But finances is another thing. Like, it's actually not super crazy hard to have one parent stay at home and raise their kids, because when both parents are at work and you actually do the math, it doesn't actually end up benefiting you so much when you got to pay for things like daycare and all this other stuff that really starts to add up. So I would encourage people to consider pulling their kids out of public school, if they can, if that's within their means. Now, I will say, like, I had always planned on doing this at some point in my life, and I had like a target. I said, when I make this much money at my company, when I'm making this kind of a salary, then we'll be able to take my wife out of her full-time job and just have her stay at home and raise the kids and take care of the home. I started that when I was, I think, less than half of what my goal was. So we were dead broke, but I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change it for anything. And so when people push back and they say, we don't have enough money to do that, I would say you don't have enough money to afford to do it the other way, right? Because you're just going to be setting yourself up for failure, setting your kids up for failure, in my opinion. Of course, everybody's situation is going to be a little bit different. Some people have great schools where they live. Some people send their kids to private school, and that's cool too. But I think the biggest thing is, and the most influential part of raising your children is literally just being able to spend time with them. And if they're somewhere else all day long and you're somewhere else all day long, they're going to be raised by somebody else. They're going to have different philosophies, different ideals. And I think that raising your kids yourself is the way to go. I totally derailed on that. What was the original question? Do you remember?
No, I think I want to tug on this one a little bit, because maybe we've talked about it before, but I didn't know that you homeschooled your kids, because I was homeschooled throughout elementary before, we had this plan for me to go play high school basketball in LAUSD so I can get beat up enough so I can know what real basketball is like. And that helped. I'll tell you, that helped as well. But I would never change me going to doing Christian homeschooling. And back in my day, it was a video school. Like, we actually had a VHS come to the house, ordered almost like Amazon style, from Becca books in Pensacola, Florida. And I was learning like this Baptist Bible homeschooling curriculum, and I was pushing myself a little faster in math and science, because I probably was a little nerd in elementary school. And it was just, I just felt like this is normal. Like, there's nothing. I knew kids who went to school, and it's like it's okay. When I finally went to 8th grade, I went to a Catholic school in 8th grade to kind of prep for public school I would go to in high school. And it's like it was growing pains, but I would never change like this foundational aspect of my life, where I was able to learn in this environment that was sponsored by my parents, and it was approved by my parents, and my parents were trying to put me on that right path, and my siblings as well. And in fact, they were in private and or homeschool even longer than me. But I guess I want to ask you, because this show's about you, not me. What is the daily life like for homeschooling now? Like, I mean, I had VHSs back in the 90s. Like, do you guys have like a teacher on a DVD or cloud-based learning, or are you guys just opening books and it's basically like continuous homework?
So I'm in a unique situation and very blessed. My wife has a master's degree in technology education. So she was a teacher. She is a very good teacher. She was actually awarded the Teacher of the Year in our state either the year before she stepped down or 2 years before, but she's a really good teacher. And so it's really nice to have that. We have a built-in educator in our home that knows how to do all those things and handle it and keep the kids on pace. But we use a standard curriculum. There are a lot of great curriculums out there, and I'm not going to recommend anyone over the other. But we basically get we order all of our supplies. It comes at the beginning of the year, and we have workbooks, we have DVDs and online lessons and that stuff too. But we also incorporate real world application type learning. My wife, she hosts a nature club where other homeschool kids and families, they basically just go do like nature oriented type things once a week. Gives them an opportunity to learn and connect with other people and to build those interpersonal relationships. And a lot of people, I have a friend, one of my really good friends. He tells me he's never going to homeschool his kid because he doesn't want his kid to be, socially challenged. And, I guess I can kind of relate to that too. By the way, I was homeschooled through elementary as well. So that's another thing you and I both have in common. But
Look at us, like little like brothers from another, not even mother, from another like region. It's funny, like everything. It's great.
So I won't speak on that because I think we can all agree. At least if you follow me on X, I've got my quirks. But my point is, like, I ended up okay, not too bad. I think it's all right, but we do make sure that that's not an issue. My kids are, and what parent's not going to say this, but my kids are way ahead, right? They're, as far as what they're learning when they go interact with other kids, especially like kids of homeschool parents or parents of homeschool kids. We always hear like, how is your kid so smart? Like, what are you teaching your kids at home? And it's really like a good advertisement for it's a good pitch for me to say, get your kids out of public indoctrination camps because it's not working. And we do try to focus on getting our kids involved with that extracurricular type stuff. A lot of it's through our church, but like I said, my wife does her club and stuff like that. But the good thing about homeschool is like you can teach your kid what they need to learn. And with public school, you're just stuck into, a routine, and it doesn't matter whether or not that's something you need. The whole class is going to get the same material and it's all going to be presented at the same speed. And, I think homeschooling allows kids that may, be able to excel. It keeps them from being held back, I think. And so, my oldest is really the only one that's old enough to kind of gone through a big part of this process. I've got two younger ones that haven't really started quote unquote school yet, so to speak. But my oldest has been a really good example and reminder like, hey, God put it on our heart that we should be homeschooling. And it's just a reminder that that I think we're doing the right thing.
I think it's interesting that people recognize that something stands out about your child, and I look back and I wonder, how did that impact me? Of course, I'm sure I have my quirks. My wife could probably tell you a dozen quirks that I have, including my friends I grew up with. It's like, oh yeah, Ulric does that one thing. If there's one thing that I know that I do, is that I'm just not afraid of being different, because I do feel like I was different all my life. And I mean, just having Christian values in Los Angeles, is one thing. There's a lot of good churches here, but there's a whole lot of other people that would have other interests, if you will. It's not like living in the Midwest. But I would say that enabled me to understand or more readily accept something as alien as Bitcoin. Because again, I did go through, even, back in the day with the homeschool. Homeschooling didn't teach you Austrian economics. The Catholic school I went to one year didn't teach that. The high schools surely didn't, and my MBA and my bachelor's degree, far from it. But when my dad told me, hey, you need to look at this Bitcoin and this is why, and my dad never tells me anything of great importance. He said, how's your basketball going? How's your school going? How's your work going? And then he said, you need to listen to this. And I perked my ears up. And I think it was because, wait, none of my friends are doing this. none of my no one I know, none of my coworkers are doing this, but still, I'm like, I'm going to tug on that string a little bit, and it was the best decision I think I've ever made besides staying committed to Christ, my whole life. I want to get into now. You also talk about you talked about something that led me to this next question. You being a social influencer, we are not worthy.
Ah!
I want to get your opinion on Bitcoin Twitter. We're obviously in a bull market. Bitcoin. Let me the price. Let me do the old simply Bitcoin pleb underground style thing or Swan, whatever. The price at the time of this recording is $88,803. And by the time it's published, it could be something much higher, much lower. But we're definitely in a bull market. What is the barometer? What is your barometer reading on Bitcoin Twitter? Are people deliriously bullish? Are they idiots? Are they going to make the same mistakes as they did 2 years ago with FTX? Are people going to start trading in a traders trade? Are they going to trade in almost a degenerate way? Do you see people getting greedy?
I think ironically, everything you just asked, I think those are all being true at the same time. I was at just my local KC Bitcoiners meetup here locally last night, and we all went around. It was the first time we'd done this, but we had a kind of a larger group than normal, obviously with some of the interest that's been peaking. But when it got to me, one of the things that I wanted to share with everybody is, I've been here for a little while, and it's interesting to me that every cycle so far has been just like the one before it. And every time everybody says this one's going to be different, and it never is. And so that's kind of my philosophy right now. And my belief, I think this is just like 2021. I think 2021 was just like 2017. It's the same old story every time. There's people just pay attention to headlines. Unfortunately, people are kind of just sheep, and they just go with the flow, and they do what they're told. But that narrative is shifting, the public narrative. You have the legacy media kind of starting to latch onto it again, saying, oh, hey, well, actually, Bitcoin's kind of cool, even though we've been dogging on it this whole time. And a lot of that, I think, just comes from, where they're getting their talking points from, right? They're just puppets too. You have folks like BlackRock, these large institutions that are now, they have their feet dug in, and they're ready to ride this up, and now they're okay with coming out and pushing their own narrative, and that kind of just trickles down. And I am seeing a lot of new people get those quote unquote text messages and phone calls from their friends and their normie friends and family, or whatever you want to call them, but no coiners. How's it going? Hey, it's been a while, we haven't talked. And they're just reaching out to the people that they know in their life that have Bitcoin, because they know something's happening. And so I think this is the beginning of those stages. I do think that we're going to have some pretty incredible face melting ahead of us. And I also do think that there's going to be another retracing. I do think it's going to come back down. I don't think once we get past this level, like, the high, around 100K, like, we're going to probably blast through that. I don't know if we're ever going to get back down below 100K. I don't know. I can't predict the future, but I do think that it will, peak at some point, and it's not just going to exponentially go up forever. There will be a local top, but there won't be a permanent top. Bitcoin's going to go up forever because fiat goes down forever. So,
well said. I think people quickly forget the hard times, and when the influencers come out and start talking about, I don't know about a retracing. I don't know, is this time different? It's like, Mr. Influencer, hey, you've been here for 2 or even 3 cycles. What are you doing? Like, what is the point of that type of engagement? And guess what? Maybe I'll tell you, a lot of influencers, this is their first cycle, and they just happen to be a part of the big Bitcoin marketing team, whatever that is. But we kind of have an idea of it. And some of these influencers, they're getting their feet wet for the first time, and they don't know what, or they could know if they looked at some history books, if they could look at some charts, and we see it, you see it, I see it. But it just goes to show maybe the immaturity of the people that have voices in this Twitter culture still. And I'll just leave it at that. But I do
Super
think,
cycle, right? That's what they're saying. They're saying super cycle.
Yeah,
And I think
I've
what they're
heard
saying
that.
what they mean when they're saying that is that, the cycles break, so to speak. Like there's no more 4-year cycle at that point once we reach this so-called super cycle. I don't believe in that at all. I think it's easy to latch onto that because that's kind of how we have viewed a lot of other assets that have been financialized. Once we get this adoption, it's a pretty steady growth increase. You see this with really any technology that we've adopted over the last 100 years, or even in the last 20, 30 years. But with Bitcoin, it is different because it's restrained by its own mechanisms, its own mechanics in the code. So, you have things like the halving, and you have things, like fee rates, all of these mechanics baked into the economy of Bitcoin in its own ecosystem. And I think we're trying to apply that to what we already have that already exists. And we think we're smarter, and we think that, it's not going to, or we think that things are going to change the cycle because we can outsmart, the supply and demand changes. I just don't think we can. I don't think we will. I do think that it will, the cycles will diminish. They'll have, diminishing impact over time. Right. But I don't think the cycles are going away for a very long time. And the other thing that I've kind of been a little bit outspoken about that I don't think I've mentioned on any type of a live format, but I'll do it here, is, people will warn you like, hey, make sure you have your minimum UTXO size over a certain threshold. So what that means is basically when you're going to like withdraw your sats to cold storage, for example, from an exchange, don't do $5 at a time, because you're going to have a UTXO that's too low, which I agree with to a degree. But the argument that they're making is they're saying that those sats are going to turn into dust. I am actually on the other side of that camp. And I think that the fees on Bitcoin will always, or at least for a very long time, maybe for our foreseeable future, will always come down to being quote unquote low. Yes. In terms of Bitcoin denomination. So we're at like, I don't know, I haven't checked. Last time I checked, we're at like 3 sats of VByte, which is really, really low. Mm-hmm. Okay. And you know what? It keeps coming down to that point. So we've seen fees spike into the hundreds of sats per VByte, thousands maybe. Mm-hmm. But I mean, some people have paid, hundreds of dollars for a single, to move one single UTXO, which is basically one transaction, and the mm-hmm. smallest way of doing it, and the most efficient way of doing it. But I have the belief that the sat per VByte rate, which is the fee rate measured on the Bitcoin time chain, I have a belief that that's going to keep always return, at least for the foreseeable future. I've got to preface that because I don't think this is going to happen forever. Right. 200 years from now, this isn't going to be the case. But for right now, I think we're going to keep coming back to somewhere between 1 and 10 sats per VByte, which most people don't agree with. I haven't found anybody that has really agreed with me on that. They're going to say, no, fees are always going to go up. And I agree, they will go up in fiat terms. And that's the key factor there. I think mm-hmm. as long as society, in whatever economy you're measuring in, as long as that economy is denominated in that fiat, dollar, so to speak, in our
you're
case,
going to feel that. That's right. You're going to feel it go up. But that $5 amount of sats, let's just say it's 50. Let's just say it's 10,000 sats. That 10,000 sats is not going to turn into dust because it will still be measured in the Bitcoin standard, the VBytes per sats. And that's the thing that we have to think about. So we have to change our frame of reference. We have to change our unit of account.
Yes.
Very brilliant. Brilliantly stated. I love the summary. And so now that we're on that technological path, that technology path, I want to get into your development, your project that you're working on, which is called Manna Wallet, or is it just called? How do you term it? Manna or
Drop the
Manna
wallet;
Wallet?
it's cleaner.
Manna,
No, I'm just calling it Manna.
right on. Whew.
It's a wallet right now.
Like Kobe or LeBron, it's just Manna, right?
Right. That's right. But yeah, for now, it is just a wallet. There might be, more of an ecosystem built around it in the future. But the problems that I'm wanting to solve right now pertain specifically to spending Bitcoin. So using Bitcoin as a medium of exchange. And so developing this wallet right now, it is essentially a Lightning wallet, and we're solving some pretty key problems. So prior to Manna, you had to really kind of choose between whether or not you wanted to do a custodial solution, meaning you're giving your keys away to somebody else to manage,
Right.
and you have to give them permission, or I should probably say they have to give you permission in order for you to use your Bitcoin.
I'm sorry.
So
Question, Professor. Is this layer 1 or 2?
this is 2. So
Okay.
Manna will be interoperable with all layer 1 and layer 2.
Okay. Go ahead.
So that's kind of one of the key points. And I'll get back to my original statement here in a moment, but I want to hammer on this real quick, because the key point to Manna is to be usable by everybody without needing to have any special knowledge. So, a lot of people get intimidated by Bitcoin when they're like, well, how do I spend Bitcoin? And then you have to ask the question, well, how much are you going to spend? Is it $1,000? Then use layer 1. Well, why? Well, if it's, a lower amount, you can save money on fees and it's faster if you use Lightning. It's like, okay, well, I'll just use Lightning because I just want to buy a coffee or whatever. It's like, okay, so how do I get this started? Well, you got to download a Lightning wallet. Well, should it be custodial or self-custodial? And self-custodial meaning you hold the keys to it. You're actually in possession of the Bitcoin yourself, not your keys, not your coins, right? So if it's self-custodial, you have it. And so it's like, okay, I want to download a self-custodial wallet because I don't want to have to require permission from somebody else to use it. And I don't want somebody else to be able to steal my money if they decide that I am not worthy to access my Bitcoin anymore. So, you go down this route of self-custodial options, and let me paint this picture. So this is a real world example of probably what started this whole journey for me. I was at a Bitcoin meetup kind of thing. We were doing watching a video of El Salvador as a group, and we had somebody come to the group that wasn't familiar with Bitcoin, but he was interested. And the host had ordered pizza for everybody, and he said, I'm buying pizza for everybody. If you want to help offset some of the cost, you can send me some sats if you want. And he gave his Lightning address or something. And the new guy, he was like, I'd like to be able to do that, but all I have is cash. And so he pulled out a $20 bill and he went to go hand it to the host. And I just happened to be literally sitting in between the two of them. And as, kind of joking around, I kind of just grabbed it out of his hand. I was like, hey, you know what? Let's make this a learning opportunity. Would you be okay with me selling you $20 worth of Bitcoin? And then you can pay the host in sats. And we can kind of, turn this into a learning opportunity for everybody. He's like, yeah, that sounds great. So I was like, okay, download this wallet. And I will send you $20 worth of sats and I'll keep your $20. So he downloaded the first wallet, and I go to send him the Bitcoin, the sats, and it couldn't find a channel. So we tried multiple times. I had him, I think the problem was on his end, but nonetheless, I couldn't get the sats to him over the Lightning network. And the fees were actually really high at this point. I couldn't send an on-chain transaction either, because it would have cost almost $20 to send the transaction. And so I was like, okay, well, that kind of sucks, because our first, example of this just didn't work. So I was like, okay, go download this other wallet. And so at this point, he's kind of like a little frustrated, like, what's going on here? But he downloads this other wallet, and he goes to set it up, and it says you must deposit a minimum of X number of sats. And it gave us, I don't know if it told us there, but it would have been $15 for him to open up a Lightning channel on this self-custodial wallet. And so out of this $20, he would have gotten $5 of it. And so it's just not practical. And explaining that to somebody in the terms that I just explained it to you, sounds absolutely crazy. If you understand how the Lightning Network works, you know, if you're listening or watching this, you might say, well, obviously you have to open up that channel. You've got to essentially buy the liquidity up front. And then from that point, it's basically free almost to transact in Lightning as long as you can route the payment. But for an average person, that is so beyond anything they're willing to work with. Like, that is so far down, it's just not practical. And so not only have you seen companies leave the US, but you've also seen some of these companies go out of business because they just, you know, they're not being used because it's just not practical. So that is what we are solving with Manna. We are going to be the first self-custodial option without any of those headaches. And so we're using a lot of technical implementations on the back end to automate a lot of this. So when you go to buy your own Bitcoin, for example, if I were to send him that $20 worth of Bitcoin in sats over to Manna, in that case, if Manna would have existed back then, he would have gotten almost the full $20. It would have been nearly instant. And he wouldn't have had to know what the Lightning Network was. He wouldn't have had to know anything about the layer one. He wouldn't have had to know anything about fees. It all just works out automatically for the customer. And so the only way we've been able to solve this so far in the industry is with custodial options. So like exchange-based wallets. You've got like Strike, for example, which is great, but it is KYC. You know, you can't use Strike unless you have a bank account, basically. So I wanted to have an option where, you know, it was not permissioned. You could be self-custodial and retain your keys and still get a lot of the same benefits as using a custodial wallet. And I think really, I'll just drop a name here. Wallet of Satoshi has been really, really good all over the world. And it's kind of almost been I was going to say Bitcoin standard, or I was going to say gold standard, but we should probably say Bitcoin standard. It's been the Bitcoin standard of Lightning wallets, I think. And so if we can make something like that, that works as well as Wallet of Satoshi, but is self-custodial, that is our goal. And we're already in development, and we're in really kind of the early stages of alpha testing right now. But it is coming along. It's going to be here in 2025 at some point.
Don't you have a beta out? Do you have an APK released already?
We have an APK. It's private alpha testing right now. So
okay. Oh, that's what you said. Okay, yeah.
At the time of this recording, it is semi-functional. We have everything working kind of in our back end test environment, but we're just porting it over all to an app right now. It's not a fully functional product yet on the app, like on your phone. So, but we're getting really close to having that.
Right on. Adam, this was great to engage with you on all these topics. I wish you well in not only your wallet, but your social engagement. Imagine being a developer slash, you know, super engagement, you know, farmer. This is going to be, as President Trump says, going to be huge. I appreciate you coming on my show, brother in Christ. Have a good rest of the week. And before you go, I gotta because we're going to be a little bull market degen. What's your call for your market top?
Couldn't get out of that one, could I?
I'm sorry.
Oh man,
we're in a bull market now. You're the first person I've asked, so I'm going to start asking.
Optimistic?
People. No.
Or realistic?
Realistic. I don't care about that optimistic nonsense. What's real?
So are we talking about within the next 4 years? Is that your
I'm talking about before this local top, before the party ends properly in 2025.
Yeah. Okay. Realistically, if I had to like say, you know,
gun to your head,
this is my number, gun to my head, 340.
Sounds nice. I'm a little lower. I'll say mine. I'm saying realistic top.
You got to say it now.
This is my first time, I think, publishing it. I guess I would say 250 to 260. So we'll see. Anyways, it's been real. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you. Have a good one.
This was Adam Simecka, a great friend of mine, and this is the first time I got to talk to him live. He's doing great things in the Bitcoin space. He's building a wallet. He's engaging and asking the hard questions, saying the tough things that probably everyone wants to think, but people are too afraid to say. It probably comes from the courage that he finds in his faith. We need more people like him. I am Sir Ulric, like my father before me. Tune in next time when I bring on another proponent of liberty.